Now I know you're going to get a lot of this explanation as part of your reading in Chapter 5, but I think it might be better to at times hear it rather than just read it. So the application that you create or that's part of his code library from Chapter 5, if you download it, it'll come in a zip file, and you'll unzip it, and it'll have these files in here. The ones that matter here, you got your index file, which really contains most of your application, all the visual aspect of it, and then you've got a CSS file and a JavaScript file, and then some other libraries that are also used. And the application looks like this. It's got two different links on there and a button. And if you click on About, you can see basically an HTML page with a header. Uh, and if you click on Dates and then go into a day, you can uh, use this form to add things in. And so notice that most of these pages have all of the anchor links looking like uh, accordion style touchable link options in a phone. However, once you do this one, there's a little form on here and it looks a little different. And in terms of these pages, it's interesting how this was put together. If I go to the HTML for this page, all right, let's first look at the top real quick. Now notice that he includes three different style sheets. He includes two different JavaScript libraries that are part of, well, that he didn't create himself. However, he did create the kilo.js, and you're going to be doing something similar here. The other JavaScript libraries give basic functionality to the web page, but if you want to do something custom, like saved information to a database, you're going to have to write that yourself. All right, so we'll talk more about that file in just a second. All right, now look here in the body tag. In the body tag, there's a bunch of div tags, and each of these div tags, div ID equals home, div ID equals about, each of these represents a different page in the application. Normally with HTML, everything between the two body tags shows up on the page, but when you use this library and include this jQT library, what it's going to do is it will look for each of these uh, things, each of these div tags with IDs, and it can set them up as different pages. And so on this particular page, you see there's a section that's the toolbar, and there's a section that's called edge to edge. And you can just kind of compare these words to what's in the page. And importantly here, you see on the main page here that in the bottom half of this page, there's a block where there are two links, one that says dates and one that says about. So you could essentially copy that type of code if you were doing a jQT application. We're going to actually do a jQuery mobile one. And you could create something that looks like that. Uh, and if you were to go to dates, you see a bunch more links. So if we look at the code, we have a dates section. You get to this page by clicking on this link that says pound dates. So # dates, and so you get over to here, and you see in the bottom section here, there's just a bunch of links. So anyway, you can kind of see using jQT how they set this up, how they create all the different pages, and you could copy and mangle this code if you wanted and make an application quite easily, at least displaying some things visually. All right, let's get on to the meat of this that I really wanted to talk about. Look at this JavaScript page. Okay, so they reference kilo.js in here, and this is all custom written for this application, and you're going to need to provide something similar to this for your application so that you can handle things like reading stuff from a database and putting stuff into the database. All right, so first they set up, it says variable db, so you can just declare any random variable. You don't have to set it to anything, but you're going to be using that later. And then the next, this is just a variable that's set up as part of the jQT library. Ignore that, we don't care about that. Um, here's this really funky notation, the document.ready, and then this thing that we call an anonymous function, which goes in right there. And what that means is that uh, as soon as the document is downloaded and it's ready, it's going to do this stuff. All right, so a lot of this is just telling different pieces of HTML on the page what's gonna be attached to them. Like for this, in this example, it says like on the create entry div tag, there's a form there, and when that gets submitted, run this function. So there's a create entry function down here, and on this settings page, there's a form. When it gets submitted, run save settings, and save settings is a function. But let's look at the database code. Even though this database code is in the ready area, technically it doesn't have to be. You could have just thrown it up at the top here and so then every single time your page loads, what it's going to do is it's going to set up the variables for a database. It's going to open it, and if the table exists, in this case they're creating a table called entries. If the table doesn't exist, it will create it. And if it does exist, then it won't do this command at all. So that's an important thing to understand. This is the actual code that you care about. They just put it into a kind of convenient place, which is, they said after the page loads. Don't worry about the technical details of that. All right, another thing that's kind of interesting is that let's go look for creating an entry here. So here's a function that gets run, as we saw previously, when somebody hits a submit button on the create entry page. So let's see what that function does. We see that it grabs a date from session storage. I didn't talk about and have you do anything with setting a date to the session storage or the local storage. You can read how to do it. It's really simple, but I didn't explain it, so you don't need to worry about that as part of this class if you don't want to. However, very importantly, there is a form that is in his pages, a form HTML tag, and there is an HTML element or input field on there called calories. And what this code does right here is it's using jQuery syntax. It says, grab me or locate the HTML tag that says calories and grab me the value out of it. And do the same thing for the tag that says food. So let's go jump over to the index page real quick. And in that section somewhere, we see a create entry div page, and we see that there is an input tag called input type equals text with a name equals food, and another one with name equals calories. Those ones show up on the input form right here. Here's the food input field, and here's the calories input field, followed by the submit button. They each have names associated with them. And if I go over here to the JavaScript, then what we're saying here is that we can read the value out of that input field, set it to a variable, and then once we have, in this case, 3 different variables set up, we can run this code. And most of this is boilerplate code, meaning we use it over and over again. So these couple lines and these couple lines get used over and over and over again. The part you're going to change is what is the SQL command you're doing. And in this case, there are 4 different things that go into transaction.execute SQL. And let me explain that a little further too in a second. But the first line is the HTML is the SQL statement, and if you wanted to, you don't have to. So that's parameter 1. There's parameter 2, parameter 3 before the next comma, and then parameter 4, and then it ends. You can see I'm kind of, if I highlight that there, it's red in the parentheses. So there's 4 different things you can pass in. Technically, you could just get away with that and then add in the parentheses, semicolon, and you'd be done. But there are a couple other things you can throw in. In this case, we are passing in our variables in a separate list. They will replace these question marks in the order that they are listed. And then we have a success function and an error function that is there. And now here's this same transaction.SQL statement written somewhere else. However, there's not as much going on, and so perhaps it's a little bit easier to talk about. So we have a function here that says delete entry by ID. So at some point in our program, we're going to pass in an ID value, and it's going to say db.transaction. Anyway, so you got all your boilerplate stuff right here that you have to write every single time. And then here's the first argument. It's a SQL statement that has a placeholder for a variable that's going to go in there. You're going to say delete from the entries table where the ID equals that. Here's the variable that you're going to use. And technically you could write in null, which means do nothing, and you could also write null right there also. So if you didn't want to worry about your error handling and stuff, you don't have to put it in there. It can be kind of nice though to write little functions that deal with things. In this case, if an error pops up, it will supply in magically, I would say here, because you don't see it being passed anywhere, but this function knows that if there's a problem, it will try and call whatever's right there and send it two different messages. And you can use an alert box or console.log to write those things out in a place that you can see and review them. So anyway, hopefully along with your readings, that gives you a better understanding of some of the key things that are happening. And for you, you're going to need to understand some of these key things, that you are going to need to at some point in your project read values from HTML and interact with the database using this code, and this part is the part that you're going to be modifying basically, whether it's insert or delete or select. The other stuff's mainly boilerplate. It's the same thing over and over again.